Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's really nice. It's big. I mean, on the other side of that wall, there's more seating. It's only the second time I've been there. But my daughter-in-law went to Cowboys.
Oh, okay. I figured she came here for political, like everybody else. Isn't that why most people come to bars? Political discourse?
Don't make me laugh.
Test, test, test.
How does this sound?
Sounds good.
I'm raised up.
So let me get back in here. Hang on.
Think about
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. This is Ohio Political News, the #1 source for real news in Ohio. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Reporting live with Ohio Political News, the #1 source for real news in Ohio. You got it?
I think so. Do it one more time.
Testing.
See how loud this is? This is pretty good. Pretty good.
I think so. About the kick one.
Test with 2, test. Sounds good.
It happens. All right. Now. 2 cents. Good to see that. Good to see that. Kids running around and just that's the way.
Yeah. I'm going to do an intro and then go into prayer. But he can go upstairs. He should go up front there. All set?
I think I'm winning winner
We can probably get started here. It's really good to see everybody here tonight. And we've got a panel. I don't know what's scarier, the panelists or that guy that's on the banner there. But all right, what we're going to do tonight is we are going to be talking about property taxes, abolishing the property taxes. We want to make this a very interactive night tonight. So I'll probably be roaming around here with questions and stuff. We've got a talented crew. These guys up here on the panelists are very talented, so they can answer the questions, believe me. They can answer the questions. And my name is Joe Miller. I'm with Ohio Political News. This is a podcast organization we've established. So we're sponsoring this tonight along with Monday Night Roundtable. George Satari. I'm not sure where George is. Oh, I see George. He's over there in the corner. All right. So we're putting this on. We're really thankful that the Thirsty Cowboy allowed us to use the facility here tonight. And I'm glad that we have a pretty good crowd. So, yeah. All right, I'm not going to talk only a minute longer. We're going to get hopping with this whole thing. But in my, as far as I'm concerned, there is no bigger issue coming up than property taxes and the abolishment of property taxes. This has got to rate number one in the state of Ohio. And, you know, these guys up there are doing a great job to get the signatures. Make sure you sign the petition today if you have. But property taxes today are killing us. I mean, they're just killing us. And we have to do something about it, because if you leave it up to the legislators, they ain't going to do anything about it, okay? They will not do anything about it. We also, you know, Heather, I'm going to introduce you here. Heather Hill, who's running for governor. You guys, let's give her a hand here. And Stu, stand up. Stu is her lieutenant governor. So they were really nice to come out here. Now, did you want to say something, or just keep? Yeah, you can say it now. We'll get hopping. I don't think there'll be time. But, I mean, you know, if you just want to say something, quick.
Can you join me back here? I just want to introduce myself again. My name is Heather Hill, and I'm running to be your next governor in 2026. I am a conservative, military mother, business owner, wife, and I'm just a regular, everyday person like you. But I'm someone who got tired of the crap and decided to do something about it. I don't know if any of you recognize me, but I did the It's Okay commercial for President Trump's last campaign. I helped out on Bernie Moreno's campaign. I also own Ohio Honey Lodge and have done some commercials for the NRA. But I am also someone who has had to go 4 times and request an audit because my property taxes were too high. When we have true representation of people that understand what it's like to work hard every day and struggle, that is when things will truly change for us. So I am going to be that person. Stu and I are working very hard to go all over the state of Ohio because we are the outsiders. They are against us. They're trying to prevent you all from hearing our names. They're trying to prevent us from getting ballot access. We have come around to pretty much everyone and ask you to sign our petitions. Please don't leave here if you're a registered Republican without signing our petition. We have to have 1,000 good signatures to be on the ballot. And like I said, when we have true representation, that's when things will change. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. I will stay as long as this evening, but like I said, please don't leave without signing that petition. And I'm going to let Stu introduce himself.
Hey everybody. Once they saw I had a cowboy hat, they invited me to the Thirsty Cowboy here today. I have a new hat for you all. I'm a student though, so I'm retired military. I was a contracting officer for a while, so I know exactly some of the ins and outs of the fraud, waste, and abuse that the good old government, how we spend our money. And yes, like Heather was saying, we are huge proponents of abolishing property taxes. I was telling a couple of citizens here, I pay $25,000 a year in property taxes. So I understand between, we're just average people. I mean, we're business owners, and we feel that no matter what, every decision should be what is in the best interest of Ohio citizens. And that's where, I know we're not here to talk about data centers and AI, but we don't feel that is best for the citizens of Ohio. So I really appreciate you guys being here. I know we're here for Joe and the panel, and just get that on out there a bit. I don't think I've much of your time, so it's good being here, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Dakota up there, and we'll get this show on the road, okay? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to invite Pastor Al Davis here to lead us in invocation.
Good evening. Good evening. Let's open in a word of prayer here tonight. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you that we live in a country that's still free enough that we can come together and gather like this, that people from all over the area can come together, that we can talk about things that are necessary. And we look at this and we think, well, it's not a church gathering. What do we have to pray about? Well, we certainly have to pray about direction, guidance of our government leaders. We pray for the panel here tonight, and we pray for each one that's here this evening, that you would just give us information that we could use, that we can be better prepared to make a difference in the community around us, make a difference in our churches, in our homes, our families. And Lord, again, as we think about this, the idea with the property taxes and people that are losing their homes and being cast out in the streets, Lord, is if there's not a moral cause there, I don't know what there is. But Lord, we just pray that you would give us some guidance and some direction. We pray for the state of Ohio, that you would move the hearts of our government officials, that they would recognize the need to have something done. Again, bless this evening. We thank you for the opportunity. Keep us safe. We just pray your blessing in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to introduce our panel. I'm going to start here with Tom Z.
Hi, I'm Tom Zawistowski. I'm the president of the We the People Convention organization. We also run a bunch of PACs. Thank you for that. We've been leading the Tea Party movement in Ohio for the past 16 years. We've done a hell of a lot of good things, including in 2011 when the Ohio Tea Party movement passed the Ohio Healthcare Constitutional Amendment. Do you guys remember that, 2011? We got 600,000 signatures and got it on the ballot to keep Ohio out of the healthcare exchanges and to try to stop Obamacare. And just so you know it can be done, we've already done it. We did it. We won the ballot. We won by 60% in all 88 counties after we got that on the ballot. Okay? And I think that this is a hell of a lot more popular than the anger there was against Obamacare. So we got to get on the ballot, because if we do, then our odds get a lot better. Okay? So thanks for coming out and learning more. We're looking forward to your questions. All right.
Hello, hello. My name is John Plechnik, and you can call me Professor Plechnik or Commissioner No, because I always vote no on taxes, now more than ever, Because the property taxes, if I don't need to tell you this, are too damn high. And they can only get higher and higher and higher, folks. I'm here the same reason you're here, because of the 30% revaluation and the reality that if we do nothing, and by double digits in 3 more years. We have to say no, loud and proud, right here, right now, or the future of Ohio will be gone. So I'm here to show that there are a few elected officials who know it can be done. We can cut property taxes to 0, we can balance the budget, and we can have a better state at the same time. Anyone who says it's impossible is either ignorant or doesn't want you to know the truth.
Welcome everyone. My name is Leonard Gilbert. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia originally, but I've been in Ohio now for over 30 years. And I started this property tax journey about 15 years ago. Wrote my first editorial about 10 years ago. Everybody was looking at this from a dollar and cents issue, but I looked at it more from a biblical perspective. Look at the scripture and what people, how they're looking at this. If you do not recognize the fact that freedom or ownership is the foundation of freedom and liberty, we have totally lost sight of why we exist. And so that's why I'm here tonight, just to share a little bit more information about how we do this, and it is possible to be done, and there's blessings for doing what is right.
Thank you, Leonard. We're going to have another panelist, Chris Galloway of Lake County Auditors, is going to join us. He's running a little late, but we look forward to hearing from his perspective. My name is Brian Massey. I'm just an average citizen. I live in Lake County. I've been looking at property taxes for over 10 years. I started out by trying to educate people on can they afford a property tax levy by teaching housing affordability threshold. Then I started trying to teach everybody about inside, outside millage, House Bill 920, 20 mil floor. Then I realized, well, the legislators don't even understand this. So how are we going to have average citizens understand this complex system? As Leonard said, this is more than a dollar and cent issue. It truly is a freedom and liberty issue. What we'll do tonight is we'll let you know of our journey. Leonard and I started this really about 10 years ago, and we've been to the state legislators. We try to reach out to our senator, our 2 representatives in Lake County. They chose to ignore us. We went down into the state capitol, House Ways and Means Committee, spoke before Representative Romer's property tax review and reform. They censored our speech. They didn't want to hear us. So we then said something's got to be done. Since they would not do a carve-out for seniors, we were trying to get seniors to abolish property taxes for seniors when they hit 65. The state legislators told us absolutely no carve-outs for seniors. We then said, we've got to starve the beast. That's when we got a lawyer from Lake County, and I always give her credit. Her name is Katrina Vesna Midget-Barisik. Without her, this whole movement would not have started. We could not find a patriotic lawyer in Lake County or in Ohio that would help us. So she deserves lots of claims. But we'll also tell you what our experience was in Leonard and I going talking to the county commissioners at their winter conference. It should be very interesting. Thank you very much.
I asked for just a second to bring something up that I think we have to talk about and that we need to recognize. About a week ago, we suffered what I think is a very significant hit to our conservative movement when our good friend Bob France was unceremoniously thrown off the air on WHK Radio 1420. How many of you people listen to Bob France? I see a lot of people. How many of you consider him a friend, have met him, right? We talk a lot in the conservative movement about taking care of each other, standing up for other conservative businesses, supporting the people that provide services we need. I just don't think we can let it pass that the supposedly Christian Salem Communications, the owner of the radio station, would take a guy who has been working for them for 11 years and unceremoniously just fire him when he got off his radio show, and they just said, "You're done, that's your last radio show," right before Christmas. I don't know about you, Dan and I have owned a business for 42 years. I wouldn't do that to an employee that I hated. Certainly doesn't seem very Christian to me. And I think you should be angry about that, and I think you should let them know about that. And I can tell you that I've been in communication with Bob since it happened, because I care about him as a human. He's got a family, and it just took him by total surprise. He's basically like, what happened? So I want you to know that, and if you listen to Bob, he's a fighter. He ain't going to back down. He's going to fight. And he's working on some ideas to start, like a streaming service or something like that, which we're going to need. We're going to need that voice. We're going to need somebody who speaks the truth, brings these politicians for you to hear. And he's going to be reaching out to you, I think, for like a give, send, go type thing to help fund his operation. And I want you to be looking out for that. You can follow him on X at Strictly Speaking. I know that. He's got a Strictly Speaking, newsletter that he puts out that's just terrific. But I just wanted to share with you guys, that this is not something you should just go, oh man, that's not a good thing. That's not good enough. He's going to need our help. We need to help him. And the people that did that, you need to let them know that that's not what we expect of people who call themselves conservatives and sure as hell not call themselves Christians. So I want to make that comment before we got started. Thanks for indulging me with that.
Thank you, Tom. We're going to get started here. We're going to open the floor up to questions. Joe Miller has the microphone here. So the format we're going to do tonight is we're just going to open the floor. We're going to get rolling with questions, and we're going to have whoever wants to answer the question on the panel here is going to be able to answer your question that you have, because we want to hear what your thoughts, your concerns are on this issue. It's a very important issue. It's something that's taken up 90% of the legislators' calendar this year, and so that they need to hear about this. And so that's why we're having this event here today, and we want to hear your thoughts, your concerns on this issue. So if you have a question, or we'll get started here. Joe Miller's got the microphone.
I would say just raise your hand if you have a question, stand up, do a cartwheel, something that I know that you want to talk. All right.
This is for Commissioner Plesnick. So, as one of the commissioners of Lake County, if I move there, because I want to move out of a high tax rate county, I'm in Cuyahoga County right now. If I move to Lake County and apply for an agricultural exemption or one of those wildlife management exemptions where I could just put some beekeeping boxes in my backyard or, whatever, bird houses, could I get that if I move to Lake County? So the rules for agricultural exemptions are the same in every county. There's not going to be a difference between Lake or Cuyahoga. Those are state rules. So I don't think you're going to find yourself advantaged moving to Lake County there. It is true that our sales tax and our average property tax rate is lower than Cuyahoga County, so you will be saving money right off the rip. It's also true that of the 88 counties in Ohio, Lake is one of only 4 that adopted both the doubling of the homestead exemption and the owner occupancy credit. So I'm not going to say you're a senior ready for the homestead, but if you do own a home, you'll go from a 2.5% to a 5%, a double owner occupancy credit in Lake. So we've done everything. We've taken the tools that the state has given us to lower taxes as much as we can. But as I said to our state senators and reps, it ain't enough. The tools that we have in Lake County simply are not enough. You haven't given me the power to abolish property taxes in Lake County. That's what I want. You know, if I could have no property taxes in Lake County and every other county had property taxes, it would be a great experiment, right? And what you would see is that we'd still have roads, we'd still have police, we'd still have fire, we'd still have schools, we'd still have libraries, and you know what? We'd have a lot more of them because everyone from Ohio would start to pile into Lake County. Everyone would want to live here because we would be the capital of Ohio, the lowest taxed area where businesses, residents, young, old, seniors, happy, healthy, sick, and ill, where everyone is most welcome. We keep forgetting about the advantage of abolishing property taxes, and that's what your question really expounds on. You're like, I want to move to a county with lower taxes. You're not the only one. If you look at all the states in the union and the migration patterns, people are leaving and have been for the last 20 years. High-tax states like New York, in this category, Ohio, and they're moving to low-tax states like Tennessee, Texas, and Florida. So if Lake County could abolish property taxes and the rest of the state was stuck paying them, you know what would happen? Our population in the union to abolish property taxes, and everyone from Texas to Florida is talking about it now. We would see for the first time in a generation an immigration positive, a net positive immigration to Ohio. And these are folks with jobs and companies and businesses and money, and suddenly the state income and sales tax will boom, and we will have more revenue than when we started. Thank you.
Very good. Who else has a question? I got to keep moving. This is a great exercise for me because I don't get it quite as much. There you go.
Okay, the real question is, fine, you get rid of the real estate taxes, but a lot of those taxes fund schools and other things. So what would you replace that in order to fund the schools and everything else?
I have to double up here because the answer is two words. It's that simple, folks. How do you replace it? Two words. Cut spending. Repeat after me. Cut spending. They say there's not a Republican and Democrat way to pave roads, and I agree. But there is a Republican answer and a Democrat answer to how you replace revenue. And the Democrat answer is to raise taxes somewhere else. The Republican answer is to cut spending. Folks, Ohio's budget is record-breaking. It's budget-busting. It's over $100 billion. That is the all-funds budget for Ohio this year. Property taxes bring in about $20 billion a year. Doesn't take a math professor to tell you it would require a 20% cut in the Ohio budget to pay for all property taxes, without, by the way, requiring any cut to local services whatsoever. We already have the means and the mechanisms for the state to reimburse localities. We already do it through the pre-existing homestead exemption. Could be easily enough done. And we can pay for the cutting of property taxes through the state sales tax and the state income. I got to tell you, in 1934, when Ohio adopted the state sales tax, it did so for three reasons. Number one, to fund public schools. Number two, to fund local government, roads, police, fire. Number three, to alleviate poverty. But the state kept the money. So then in the 70s, we passed the income tax to fund public schools and fund local government. But the state decided to keep the money. And under Governor John Kasich, they kept a lot more of it. Then they said, we'll pass a lottery. That'll pay for schools. Do I really need to tell you how this story ends, folks? They pass tax after tax after tax and fee after fee. They throw some lottery and gambling on top of it, and it's still not enough. I don't care how much money you give the government. It never saw a dollar it didn't want to spend, and it will spend more. So the answer to the question, if you're a Democrat, is raise taxes somewhere else sky high. Put sales tax to 30%, income tax to 20%. I'm not a Democrat. I'm going to give you the conservative. We cut spending by $20 billion. We boost the economy by being being the first in the nation to have no property tax, and we end up with more revenue than when we started.
All right, got a question back here, guys. Very good.
Hi, my name's Jeff, and my question, I guess I'll direct that to you, Tom. With the ending of property taxes, does this slow down corporations that are buying these houses like crazy, or does this enhance that?
Yeah, that's a serious problem that's going on, not just in Ohio, but nationwide. And I think there's some things at the federal level that they're doing, the Trump administration is going to do to cut back on that. But the reality is that it will, if we cut the property taxes, it will have an effect, I think, of lowering the cost, like even of rent. If you're a landlord and you own an apartment building, and and let's say they're a corporation, there's not going to be competition for your renters because the cost of housing will go down. Younger people will be able to afford a house that they can't afford today if they're not going to have to pay property taxes on top of that. And so I think the answer to your question is competition. And again, you're going to say there's people who say, geez, I don't want Walmart and I don't want these other big corporations to get all this stuff. But the reality is most of them are getting tax credits anyway. And so it's really about small business like this one here. The large companies are paying in property taxes here in Orange County that can go towards hiring more employees, improving their facilities, whatever it takes. So I don't have a silver bullet to say that this particular lawsuit really stops that. It is a problem, but I think there's other things we're going to do to stop that.
And I would say, one of the things, I live in Michigan, so housing affordability is a big issue in the state of Michigan, just because we can't build houses for us expensive. So the way that I see this, there was a landmark civil Supreme Court case in 1925. Actually, it was the village of Euclid at the time. This is a property developer, and they were sent loans by banks out of New York City. And it established constitutionally that cities and municipalities could establish zoning regulations in their area. Because the banks now that we could establish zoning regulations and make it harder to build property, that they would have to apply for mortgages and loans to buy property. They made it unaffordable, so specifically you had to borrow from a bank and that you had to pay them more money, and they made a profit off of it. That is one of the real reasons why we have such housing affordability in this country is because of that Supreme Court case in 1925, and it was right here in Cleveland that decided that.
Okay, question back here. Go ahead.
Okay, my question is for John. The published budget is $60 billion. You mentioned $100 billion all fund spending. Could you please explain that?
Absolutely. Our state legislators like to reverse words, politicians do. And when we talk about $60 billion, they're talking about the general fund budget, which is only a part of the all funds budget. You'll see this by autonomy with virtually every government agency, whether it's your city, your village, your township, your county, or the state of Ohio. And the general fund can be spent on any legal government purpose, but every entity has a lot of funds that can be spent on limited purposes, only on sewers, only on schools, only this grant for this purpose. And I would say if someone asked you, well, what's your budget, you wouldn't just say spending money was, $1,000 a month. You would want to know what's the all-in. What have you spent in toto? And in toto, Ohio's budget is over $100 billion.
I'd just like to elaborate a little bit, or have you elaborate. I mean, you raised a good point. It's the same game they play with your house is worth $600,000, but we only evaluate it at $35,000. It's like going to a discount store. Why do they play those games? They play the games with everything, including the rollbacks and the discounts and everything else, and in the end, you're still paying more taxes.
Well, there's a very simple reason why they play those games, and I think that Brian Massey knows this better than everyone. It's the opposite of transparency. Why do we talk in terms of mills, which are, a thousandth of a dollar, instead of dollars. We all know what a dollar is. Why are we talking about mills? Why are we creating new terms? Why do we have a difference between the value and the assessed value? Why do we have loopholes and exceptions and 20 mil floors and exceptions to the 20 mil floor? The answer to all these questions are one and the same. If we had a simple, clear taxing system where everyone understood how much they were paying, we would have revolted a long time ago. The reality is the system is intentionally opaque and overly complex so that you don't know how much you're paying for local services. If you found out that you were paying $1,000 a month for cable, you would cancel. Well, guess what? You're paying a lot more than $1,000 a month for government services, and we're about ready to cancel them.
Very good. Hey, look, Brian, do you want to ad-lib on that a little bit? Because that's right up your alley, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Plechnik, mentioned about the schools, and Auditor Galloway and I have had some discussion on this. And the question we always get is, how are we going to replace the money for schools? And we basically say we're not. Do we need 611 school districts in the state of Ohio? No. Why do we have 611 school districts? Lake County's got 9 school districts. Why don't we have 1 school district per county? And maybe in the larger counties we have, 2 or 3 because of the number of students. What I've discovered through a lot of analysis in Lake County is that the public sector has outgrown the private sector's ability to pay for the services. So we need to streamline the schools. For approximately two-thirds of your property tax bills are going for the schools. And to me, to continue a school system that's producing very poor scores, one-third of the kids at the third grade reading level are only proficient, and 2/3, I understand from Laverne Gore, when we had her on Ohio Political News, she said that the Cleveland Public Schools, 2/3 of the kids in the Cleveland Public Schools are functionally illiterate. Why would we continue to fund a public school system that is not working? It doesn't make sense. Now, a lot of people say, well, the schools are the heart of the community. And Leonard and I have talked about this. We're not opposed to anybody just stroking a check for their local schools. They can do that. Who is responsible for the education of a child? Not the government, is it? What is the role of government? Should the government be in the role of valuation of properties? How did that happen? Right? In Lake County, we're spending $1.8 million for the valuation of a property. Then we try to get some details on it, and Auditor Galloway will probably challenge me on this, but we try to get some details from the third-party appraiser, and we're told, no, we can't do that because it's all proprietary information. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute. We've got a third party that's using public funds that is controlling our destiny, but is not accountable to us. And as I say, there was a Tea Party in Boston a few years back on that very issue. It's just not acceptable. So we are not, to answer the question, how are we going to replace the funds, we're saying no. We need a Doge in Ohio. Would you like to answer that?
Hi, sorry I was late. I'm Chris Galloway. I'm the Lake County Auditor, and I want to thank John and Tom and Brian for inviting me to be here. I was busy actually doing the job I was elected to, so that was why I was late dealing with the state agency. But if you've heard a lot about recently the consolidation of government and schools, that's because I'm the guy who proposed it. The governor put me on his property tax work group to try to figure out reforms that were possibly palatable to the legislature. For those that do know, the Auditors Association has been working on these issues for several years, and some of the legislation that recently passed by the House and the Senate were point blank everything that the auditors were proposing that they do 3 years ago. And in some ways, had they not done that, had they done it, we wouldn't probably be in as big a mess as that we're in right now. That said, when I was going through the governor's work group process, and Brian has heard me say it, John has heard me say it, you know, for us as Ohioans, if you look at the government, local government, and the delivery of services, 70% of any local government budget is personnel. It's labor. And so we as a state and we as citizens have got to figure out, one, what are the services we want or don't want? And then two, we have got to figure out a more efficient and cost-effective means of delivering those services. And what that means is going to be some hard decisions on things like consolidation of schools, which is why I proposed that the state of Ohio go from 611 to 94 school districts, because you would save billions of dollars. To John's point earlier about revenue replacement, the first step in this process long term, in order to get tax reform, is reducing the cost of government. Brian has said this repeatedly as well. And schools, they are making up what? Depending on where you live, 60 to 70% of your property tax bill. And so if we are going to get control of this issue, short of Brian's wishes of getting rid of property taxes altogether, then we have got to figure out how to reduce the cost of government. It's that simple. And so consolidation of schools, to me, is a no-brainer for beginning. You know, Lake County, smallest geographic county in the state of Ohio, 9 school districts. We also have 8 library districts. Do we need 8 library districts? No, right? You have counties in northwest Ohio that have literally 29,000 residents, and they have 4 school districts. So not 29,000 students, 29,000 people, and it's 4 school districts. How does that make sense? It doesn't in this day and age. Because the reality is, in 1914, when the state of Ohio had over 2,600 school districts, and we had the Model A Ford, and it was pre-World War I, and if you had to get business done, you spent the day traveling to your county seat, to get business done at the courthouse. But now we live in an era of automobiles, interstates, highways, the internet. We don't need to design a system or maintain a system that was designed in an antiquated period. And so that's the big question that we have to start looking at as Ohioans is, and everyone in this room I think would agree, if you started Ohio today, right, whether it's the way we have government structured or the way we tax, whether it's sales tax, property tax, income tax, would anybody build the system that we have now? No. Nobody would design the system the way it is now. And that's really what we have to do, is figure out, okay, we have to figure out how we're going to redesign this, for a modern era. And does it make sense to have 611 school districts? No. Does it make sense to have so many library districts? No. Does it make sense to have, all these different health districts and all these other? No, it does not. We are taxing ourselves into oblivion, to Brian's point, to pay for layers and layers of government in this state that are unnecessary.
All right, now we're getting to the real issue, folks. We're getting to the real issue. Because he's absolutely right, but how do you do it? And I've been for this. Brian and Leonard and I have talked since they started, and I've supported that. I'm for, property taxes to me are unconstitutional. You own your property. You can't be taxed forever. It's a constitutional issue, first and foremost. Second of all, it's an economic issue, right? It's a freedom and liberty issue, but it's also economic. But what got me kind of off the sideline and up on the panel and trying to promote this and get it going is to answer the question that Chris just delivered. How do you do this? And what shocked me into action was Doge. The president gets elected, Musk is there, there's $1 trillion we can save. There's waste and fraud and abuse everywhere. It's everywhere. Let's start looking for it. And what was the reaction by Congress, by the deep state? Total resistance. Total resistance. Let's burn his car dealerships down. How's that? You like that? And that's when I started going, whoa, 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 whoa. There's something more important here than just we want to get our property taxes under control and individually what it means to us. It's a societal issue. What Chris said, you cannot just let pass by that 70% of all government cost is personnel. Are about this close to moving into the age of AI. What are they talking about with AI? Right? They're talking about white-collar jobs going adios. You got 634 school districts, whatever it is, they all have a treasurer that does what? Accounting. You can have one AI do all the accounting for every school district in the state and it'll be better than it was ever done before. How do we transition to that? We're already bloated beyond belief, and then when AI starts happening in our lives and in our businesses, and it's a big part of society, we're going to be just behind in government. Like the FAA, right? Folks, I mean, I'm not kidding. So Donald Trump, we start looking at the FAA, they're using Windows 95 computers to run the air traffic control system. Do you understand that? And guess what? For 40 years, well, 95, so that's 30-some years, okay? We've spent money to replace them. We need more computers. Let's replace them. And you know where it all goes? To personnel. It all goes to staffing. They never fix the problem. So here's the bigger issue. And for all you folks who are watching the live stream, this isn't just for these people here. This is for all of you in the state. Here's what you got to understand. We need to break the system to fix it. There is no way, none, that these people are going to work with you to come up with an idea for, geez, how can we cut some police officers or maybe cut overtime or how can we consolidate? You think they're going to offer anything? They ain't offering a damn thing. There is only one way to reform this, and that's to pull the plug. The money is gone. Have a nice day, okay? And get your ass in a room and start acting like professionals and solve the problem and go back to basics. Because if you don't, we're done as a society. Brian said it. Our public sector has priced themselves out of our ability as the private sector to pay for it. That's insane. Our government should cost like 10%, not 50%. So that's what you're doing here tonight. You're not just here talking about, saving money on your property taxes and how we fund the schools. You're talking about something much bigger. And the real thing you're here for tonight, and all you people watching this are here tonight to learn about, is what the hell are you going to do to get that ballot signatures to get this thing out there so we can vote it in, or all of this is a waste of time. That's the real story.
Exactly. Okay, very good. All right, I got George Satari who wants to ask a question here from Monday Night Roundtable. He helped sponsor tonight, so George.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I read some statistics in the Very Plain Dealer. 39,000 per pupil in the city of East Cleveland. I don't know if it's true it was in the Very Plain Dealer, but let's take some numbers. The average per student is very high. We don't need those kind of monies to educate. Robert Welch wrote a book 30 years ago, 40 years ago, The Romance of Education. Nobody loves education. They just view it as, oh, let's just play on my computer and this, that, and the other thing. But anyhow, my major point is the average age for new home ownership for first-time buyers. Does anybody know what that age is? 48. Well, actually, 38 years, 6 months, 2 weeks, 4 days, 7 hours, and 12 minutes. But who remembers? I looked at the statistics, and if you factored in your real estate taxes on a home payment, a 30-year mortgage could be paid off in 18 years. If you added an extra payment per year, you could pay that off in 10 years. Could you imagine what kind of freedom and liberty that would buy for a family of 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals? I mean, that's freedom. And sure, they would have some expenses on education, but education shouldn't cost as much as it does. Obviously, like Brian says, send a bill for police and fire. But getting a 10-year mortgage, and actually I just ran some numbers with one of my clients who's a financial planner. I'm going to actually have that by an actuarial scientist who's one of the top actuarial scientists in the country. His hourly rate is almost $600 an hour. So I'm going to pay him to run that specifically so we could have a true professional run those numbers and say it's 10 years or 12 years. But wouldn't that be great if my daughter buys a house, she's pushing 35, and she could have her house paid off in 10, 15 years? What freedom, what liberty, what justice. And finally, my final point is, I know Commissioner Plechnik is running next year for office. We at Monday Night Roundtable have put a contribution together for his campaign of $500 because we need to put our money where our mouth is. We need to keep people like him in office. And I apologize to Auditor Galloway. I don't know him that well, but I know John, and he's been a stalwart and staunch defender of liberty for as long as I've known him.
All right, I think we have another question. Do you have a question?
Yeah. My name is Greg Badger. This is very, very short, and you probably will not have any clue how this relates to what you're talking about tonight. But what I'd like to do is get a show of hands of the 6 people that are on the stage tonight. Who of you know what the capitulation tour is?
Give up.
Donald Trump, in his first term, went to 10 countries and got them to capitulate because our military has all the goods on the child trafficking that they've been doing with these countries. Sadly, Ohio has the worst child trafficking of all 50 states in the country. You think God's going to bless that? You think he's going to let us fix stuff when that stuff is going on? All right, this is a side note. A relative of mine lived in a mansion. He had a mansion, and the mansion was in Bracknell. This is not too far past. And in this mansion, every weekend, top judges, I'm talking Townhall County, the top mayors, you name it, would go to spend an entire weekend at this mansion in Bracknell. My brother was there every weekend for years, saw it all, went there, and had card parties all night, Saturday night, all day Sunday, all day Saturday, Sunday. And limousines would come and go all night and all day with prostitutes for all these judges and elected officials in Ohio, in Cuyahoga County. You have to see this to believe it. You have no idea the depth and extent of the corruption. It is so evil, it's beyond words. It makes your head blow up.
All right.
Can I comment on that, Joe?
Go ahead, Leonard. Yeah, sure. Anybody around here got a question?
I'm glad you mentioned this about this whole aspect of a godly nation. We are an ungodly nation, and there will be no blessings for that. There are consequences for sin. I sit behind a computer mostly, I'd say at least 10, 12 hours a day, talking to people about the property tax. And I hear these gut-wrenching stories about people that have spent their entire lives working on something and on the verge of losing their homes. And when I bring that up to people and I look at what we're doing as a nation, I'm saying to myself, we have totally lost sight of the moral bearings that it takes for a nation to be blessed. And there are consequences. But I will tell you this. When John mentioned the fact that we have to hit a reset button, you better hit one. And I'll tell you the reason why. You cannot continue on this path and expect things to just get better. When I look at this whole issue of education, we were fortunate enough to educate our children at home. Now, I'm not saying everybody can do that, but there are cost-effective alternatives out there. Everybody keeps giving this notion about, well, Leonard, you got to worry about the social aspect of children and all this other kind of stuff. But let me tell you a little secret. My children know how to lie, cheat, and steal just like yours. They have to be taught the difference between right and wrong. It does not take 12 years to educate a child. When that child can walk and talk, they can start learning. We spent, over a 10-year period, less than $9,000. And you're telling me you're spending $17,000 a year on average to educate a child? Now, we have 2 engineers out of that deal. Now, my point is this. We have got to look at everything on the table and what we're doing as a society. And I understand the fact about the child pornography and all the stuff that goes on, and we are the leaders in that area. And I know some people that are involved in some of these type of things and the things that they're uncovering. But I will tell you this. When I look at where we are as a state, and Tom mentioned this, for someone to ask me what we're going to do to replace the property tax, and looking at the devastation of the hail that's being wreaked right here under our noses and right in front of our eyes, I will continue to tell you that we really are showing ourselves as an ungodly nation, and we have no choice but to repent, hit the reset button, and turn this thing around if we're going to get any blessings associated with this.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
I have an idea. I was looking at some Civil War letters, and the script and the wording is incredible. What we need is to go back to the one-room schoolhouse and less hours wasting time.
So let me double down on that point. If you look at levels of spending in Ohio school districts today, and our friend Jonathan Broadbent has really highlighted this in his research, there's actually an inverse relationship between spending and outcomes for children. The school districts that spend the most have the worst proficiency in reading, writing, and math. And so when folks say, what about the children? If you cut revenue, if you cut spending, what about the children? Well, the sad thing is, that means their scores should go up based on the data we currently have, because we have been spending and spending and spending, and it has done not a lick of good for our kids. The one-room Little Red Schoolhouse did a better job of educating our children than the multi-million-dollar complexes with a principal for every grade, the monstrosities of indoctrination that we have today. So there is no solution at this point where we can spend enough money to fix the schools. They need to be fundamentally revamped to have better outcomes for kids. And that shouldn't have to wait until property taxes are abolished. That should happen today. This should be treated as a real public health crisis. This should be an emergency. The state legislature should shut down every public school that doesn't have a 95% proficiency rate and demand an immediate revamp. It should not be permissible to have a third, a half, or less of students able to read and write when they graduate. That's not a school. That's a glorified daycare, and that is unacceptable for any American or any Ohioan. We should be mad about that. But to double down on Tom Z's point, how do we actually force a government that never saw a dollar it didn't want to spend? How do we force government that grows and grows and grows while giving us less and less in return. Worse and worse schools, less and less safety, roads that are falling apart. How do we do that? Well, simply put, you've got to starve the beast. You can only cut spending by taking away the money first. When those folks come from Columbus, the politicians say, oh, those people, those horrible, irresponsible people with the property tax petitions, they don't have a plan. We need a plan to cut spending first, and then we can cut taxes. No. You got it in reverse. We can come up with 1 million plans, and they will not support any of them because they will never cut themselves. The only way you cut government is if you cut spending, you cut revenue, you cut taxes first. Step 1, take the money away. Step 2, they have no choice but to cut spending. And the ultimate irony is that takes us back to the paradigm of the little red schoolhouse where there are teachers and students with no bureaucracy in the way. It forces us to innovate. It forces us to do better. And we end up finally getting more for less. So once again, how do you replace property taxes? 2 words, cut spending. How do you cut spending? You take away the money from government first.
Every single week. And just a couple weeks ago, the Ohio Education Association had a luncheon at the State House. It was their legislative luncheon right before they went on recess. And I asked somebody at the Education Association, how much money would it take to fix Ohio schools and make us the #1 in the nation? They can't give you an answer because educated advocates that advocate for our public school systems, there's never enough money. You could increase it by 10-fold, and that still isn't enough. An education advocate never has enough money, and they will always ask for more. And they will never, ever produce better results. They will only continue to produce worse results. If I was running a Fortune 500 company and my productivity was only 30%, I would be fired. I would be out of a job. I wouldn't have employment. But we continue to reward bad behavior, and we continue to reward poor results. So if we keep doing that, then they're just going to keep performing worse because there are no consequences for it. We aren't firing teachers. We aren't replacing with better educators. We're not improving the system. We're just throwing more money at the problem, and we're not getting better results. What we should be doing is trying to fix the structure, the foundation first. Once you fix the foundation, then you can build a house. You can't just add on an addition to the house if you're not fixing the foundation. It's not going to work. It's not going to be stable. Our education system in this state is broken. And I have proven, in Michigan this year, we have proven that we can cut spending first. We can cut that without figuring out what our plan is. We cut $5 billion in the budget. $5 billion. We did that with a Democratic senator and with a Democratic governor. We were able to cut spending, and we were able to end corporate welfare. That's the real problem. Why are we giving $600 million to the Cleveland Browns? Why? Why are we giving billions of dollars to Intel, and they haven't produced a single chip? Why are we giving all this money to big corporations? Government is picking winners and losers in private industry, and we're producing nothing. Why are we doing that? Corporate welfare should not be handed out. We have this big problem in Michigan where the Michigan Economic Development Corporation is paying billions of dollars to send our governor around the world. $18 million to send her to Japan, $18 million to send her to Australia, $18 million to send her to Dubai. Why is the governor of Michigan in Dubai? I thought she governed Michigan, not Dubai. Why are we continuing giving money to large corporations and continuing to increase our budget? Illinois has a larger population than us. They are Democrat trifecta, yet they spend less than us. How? How is that possible? That Illinois is spending less than the state of Ohio. They have a large metropolitan area in the north part of the state. They have more people than us, yet they're continually spending less than us. That's a problem. It's a huge problem.
All right, okay. Got a question, Debbie?
How can we go about getting everything dozed and take action? For example, all this DEI weird stuff, anti-American, anti-Jewish, anti-this and that. How about just your basic curriculum, similar to what Melanie Miller has proposed with Baby Olivia video showing the growth of a baby in the womb? Very factual, scientific. That's a very good step. How do we get the millions of dollars of this DEI garbage and redirect it? However, how could we do that?
Well, it's all about engaging with people and getting people together. I run the Michigan DOGE Task Force. We have 11 legislators on our task force that are going through and eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. We found $4 billion in Medicaid fraud. $11 billion in total, only four of it was state money. We found $11 billion total in Medicaid fraud. We found that we have 41,000 people in the state of Michigan that are receiving Medicaid that have matching Social Security numbers in between 1 and 10 other states, and they're receiving Medicaid benefits. We're finding out in Medicaid that people in Medicaid qualify for grocery delivery to their house. We're finding out that Medicaid is also paying for high-level name brand prescriptions over the generic prescriptions that cost way less. My military TRICARE does not pay for high-end prescriptions. My military health care pays for generic prescriptions. That's not how this is supposed to work. We need to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. I was going to make this announcement earlier, but I'll make it now. We have an Ohio DOGE task force that's being formed right now. State Representative Jennifer Gross is co-chairing it with Carrie Coleman of WNIR in Akron. We have a DOGE task force that is in the formation similar to the one that we created in Michigan. Our first Michigan DOGE task force is this Wednesday. We have a meeting. We have a meeting that's going to eliminate more money in the state to save the taxpayers more money and to eliminate 18 government departments down to 13 government departments. And that's just getting started. We have 27 government departments in the state of Ohio, each with their own director. 4 of those departments all relate to youth services. We have a Department of Youth Services, a Department of Youth Mental Health, a Department of Youth Developmental Services. Why do we need 4 government departments related to youth? We have 27 government departments. That's more than the president's cabinet. The president can run a whole country with less government departments than the state of Ohio can. How you can help? We'll make that announcement shortly, but we have a website that's in the works. It's going to be ohiodoge.us. It's in the works. We're working on it, and we'll have a task force ready for people to sign up, and we'll be going around the state making proposals to cut waste, fraud, and abuse.
I want to do a question here myself specifically, but I wanted to go to Chris Galloway here and Brian Massey maybe. But I was watching a podcast last night where they said that this one guy is called the Housing Nerd, but it was an excellent podcast. He was saying in Ohio, there's 6 states right now, 6 cities in Ohio where the delinquency rate is close to 300,000 right now. 300,000 properties. And he said if you establish that throughout the entire state, it's roughly 500,000 to 750,000 delinquent properties in the state of Ohio. Which, blows my mind. And if you fall behind on your payment, the delinquency, the fees, everything, it just keeps escalating. And then they take the house. Okay, so we're at that point right now where we have a delinquency rate that is off the charts. Off the charts. So I'll just throw that at you. What's your thought on that?
Well, it's going to potentially, you know, if the economy takes a downturn or anything of that nature, to your point, it will increase. You probably saw about a month and a half ago, the Plain Dealer wrote a big article, and they talked about the number of delinquent properties in Cuyahoga County alone, right? And it was a big number. And I called my associates in the fiscal office, you know, my compatriots, they don't have an auditor's office, they have a fiscal office. And I called them and I said, that's a large number. How does that compare historically? And they let me know that that was up 0.1%. So they've always had a large number of delinquent properties. So is it up? Yes. Are the trend lines not good? No. Is it historically abnormal? It actually isn't. But that actually comes back to the whole original point about folks being able to, and again, I don't know the numbers. I'd love to see how much of that is commercial, how much of that is residential, how much of that is vacant land that someone has abandoned, right? You have to dive into the statistics on that kind of stuff to get a true understanding. But I think it drives back to the original point of, if you have that volume of delinquency all the time, okay, what does that reflect as it comes to the cost of taxation and the cost of government and getting that under control, and so that those things don't cost as much, so that people aren't under pressure or falling behind on their tax bill or in jeopardy of losing their home because they can't keep up with a payment, right? That always comes back. All of this ultimately comes back to the cost of government and the amount of government in the state of Ohio. Ultimately, that's what it always comes back to. And these gentlemen have talked about it. They're talking about, you know, doging Ohio. I'm all for it, right? I mean, I will tell you, when I was on the governor's work group, I said repeatedly, pounded the desk about it, that the only way we're getting long-term reform is reforming government at all layers, including the state. You will find that the state wants to quickly roll out blue ribbon commissions, our friend Representative Thomas, for the county and the locals to look at how they're doing things. And I'm like, well, that's nice, except who's doing the state? Right? They are the largest consumer of dollars. They are the most massive government agency in terms of unfunded mandates under your local governments, between them and the feds. Who's going to cut state government, simplify it? The perfect example is one of the biggest bloated messes of an agency in the state of Ohio, and one of the biggest detriments to economic development in this state is ODOT. It has become a massive, monolith, bloated mess. 12 districts that are kind of independent, getting to do whatever they want, with 12 directors that nobody ever really reports to anybody. And believe me, I know, before I was an auditor, I was a township trustee, and I wanted to build a new interchange for economic development to open up a part of our township. And in order to get that done, when I had my first few meetings with ODOT, and you think, I'm building a road, right? This isn't that hard. It's a 0.3 of a mile road interchange, right? And the ODOT guys from District 12 in Cleveland rolled out to me their 17-step wheel of studies, analysis, another study, federal approval, to this, to that. And basically they were like, yeah, it's going to take you about 7 years, you know, to build a 0.3 of a mile road. Are you kidding me? Why are our road construction in Ohio runs on average about 20% more than our neighbors in Indiana? Why? Right? Because we have such a bloated mess of a state government and bureaucracy. And things like that, where you think you should just be able to build a road. It's not that hard. Oh, no, my friend. It is a 17-step wheel of analysis and everything you have to go through in order to get that done. And that's the kind of stuff that comes back to the cost of government, the structure of government, and crushing individual taxpayers trying to pay for all of it.
Thank you, Chris. I'd like to publicly thank Auditor Galloway and Commissioner Plechnik. They are unique public officials. I've been going to the County Budget Commission in Lake County probably more than Chris would like to see me, but I came up with the realization, again, the County Budget Commission made up of the treasurer, the auditor, and the prosecutor. They're supposed to be the watchdogs for the taxpayers so that the taxing authorities do not, they justify the property taxes that they're collecting, but in reality, especially in Lake County, they can't do anything about it. So they're merely a rubber stamp. I give the credit to Auditor Galloway working with Representative Thomas, going to the state, trying to get some teeth into the county budget so that they could be what they're supposed to be, and that's looking out for the taxpayers. It's still a heavy lift. The other thing I want to tell you about is Leonard and I were invited to go down to the County Commissioners Winter Conference in Columbus. We went right into the belly of the beast. And as what one person told me, he said, Brian, you gave them indigestion. Because we told them the truth. My takeaway is this, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Plechnik so he can add his 2 cents into it. But Leonard and I were talking about it on the way home, and I said, I don't believe those county commissioners, I don't believe that they believe that private property is important. And if we're not owners of private property, what are we? We're merely slaves or serfs to the government. So if we do not have county commissioners throughout the state, or legislators throughout the state, be they senators or representatives, and Jennifer Groves and Tex Fisher are an anomaly. They signed the petition, but other than those two, I'm not aware of anybody else. They do not believe that the average citizen should own property. They are flaming socialists. And I dare say, and what's the difference between socialism and communism? I say it's the size of the gun. We, as a state of Ohio, are in serious jeopardy. They are not listening to us. And I'm going to call out Senator Serino. I recorded him at a Willoughby Hills function where he's speaking about 100 politicians of Lake County. What did he say? He said, do not sign that petition. If it gets on the ballot, don't vote for it, and tell 100 people that you know to not sign it or not support it. Is he representing? I mean, what do you think of a senator that would say, if the seniors can't afford their property taxes, they should sell their home and move into an apartment? Pretty cold, don't you think? Pretty darn cold. So, ladies and gentlemen, how do we fix this? How do we fix this if our legislators are not listening to us, will not meet with us? That's how this whole thing started, when Leonard and I tried to get a meeting with our local representatives, and they ignored us. They ignored us at the House Ways and Means Committee. They ignored us when we spoke before Representative Romer's committee to review and reform property taxes. Ladies and gentlemen, they don't care about us. Pure and simple. They've got their bases covered
and they're going to say, let them eat cake.
Well said, Brian, and let me just say again, no one has done more in the movement to abolish property taxes than Brian Massey. Another round of applause. So Brian says our state legislators don't understand private property rights. He knows that I disagree on this point. I think that they do. But what's good for me is not good for thee. They've got their bases covered. They're not in danger of being taxed out of their homes. They're making good money from the government, paid by your taxes, and they have no interest in cutting them. So I think they have a perfectly good appreciation of the value of private property rights. And I dare say if you told them you're all going to have to sell your houses and move into an apartment, they would revolt. So no, they get it. They're just making sure they get theirs first. That's number one. Number two, how this started. Brian wasn't the only one who suggested legislative solutions. Going back to 2023, I wrote an op-ed in the Columbus Dispatch. And I said, if I were a state senator, I would propose a 100% property tax exemption for our seniors. Why? Because as bad as it is for all of us, seniors on a fixed income, disabled veterans, those are the ones suffering the most. And it would be very modest, very affordable from the perspective of the state budget to exempt all seniors. And we know this. This isn't my numbers, folks. These numbers come directly from the state Senate. Because Senator Al Catrona from Mahoning County proposed, I think copying off my notes a bit, proposed not 100%, but a 50% property tax exemption for seniors. And it was costed out at $1.5 billion with no limits, not on value, not on income. So once again, you don't need to be a math professor to multiply by 2 and say that 100% property tax exemption for seniors, for everyone over the age of 65 in Ohio with no income limits, no value limits, would be $3 billion. Coming back where we started, with an all-funds budget for Ohio of $100 billion plus, that means it would cost our state legislators, wait for it, less than 3% of the state budget to exempt every senior in Ohio from property taxes. So when they tell you, when the politicians come back from Columbus and say that we simply can't afford to exempt seniors from property tax, what they're saying to you is you are worth less to them than 3% of their budget. That, my friends, is outrageous. And that is how the movement to abolish property taxes was born, because if they're not willing to stop inflationary increases, not even cut taxes, just prevent future increases in taxes. If they're not willing to give up less than a salary, an inflationary increase for their raises to exempt seniors, then they certainly aren't going to cut property taxes for the rest of us. So we approach this from the perspective of people who have gone to Columbus, who have shared the numbers, who've had honest and frank discussions with our legislators, and the response we got is you aren't worth 3% of our budget to us. Well, our response is, then we're going to take all the money away. We're going to force you to reform government, reform taxes, reform schools in one fell swoop. You had years, you had decades since the Duralf case, when you were told that this was an unconstitutional way. Using property taxes was an unconstitutional way to fund public schools. It's over. The jig is up. It's time for some myth-busting, folks. When you hear your state senator or state rep say, we don't collect a dime in property taxes, that is a lie. You've heard it here. Let me repeat. Depending on where you live, 60 to 70% of your property taxes go to public schools, state schools, as in the state legislature. Article 6, Section 2 of the Ohio Constitution says the sole responsibility for paying for public schools is the state legislature. So every dime that goes to public schools is going to the state. They're the single biggest collector of property taxes in Ohio. So the moment your state rep starts to open his or her mouth and say, we don't collect this, no, you already know Article 6, Section 2. And by the way, look at their face. They already know. They just didn't know you knew. So you need to make sure you tell your friends 60 to 70% goes to the state. And by the way, I am sick and tired of the state setting up blue ribbon committees for localities. I think Lake County should set up a blue ribbon committee to audit the state of Ohio, because God knows they won't do it for themselves. It's time to look at the state budget where most of the money is and being wasted. I mean, did you hear about, just on this topic, did you hear about how the state proposed we need to mandate public portion for every government entity in Ohio for free speech, ... except for the General Assembly of Ohio? Now look, I believe in public portion. I believe in people's right to speak on agenda items and every item of legislation before it's passed. I believe in that bill. But how dare you say it's so important we need to pass a law and exempt yourself? This has got to stop. Columbus has become a miniature Washington, D.C. It's a swamp. It's time to drain it. Mic drop.
All right. Very good, very good. We're going to change the rules here for a minute, because we only got about 15 minutes. So there's a lot of people that want to ask questions. So answers have to be like a minute long. That's it. And we're trying to. I want to get as many people in here as I can. So go ahead. You got a quick comment?
Quick comment. Years ago, I was in bankruptcy court, and I saw an old couple thrown out of their house. Let me tell you something. We're going to win. And that's it. There's no other choice.
Gotta win. Gotta win. Gotta win. Go ahead.
Everybody out there getting signatures should have a bunch of pads that they can recruit other people, and it will increase exponentially, because others will get others to you have to recruit, even as you're getting a signature, recruit the person that's signing to go out and get other signatures.
We got to get the signatures. Got to get the signatures. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sure that the law always has two answers to every question, generally opposing each other. But what is the real constitutionality of a tax on property and also taxes on unrealized gains?
So, as a tax professor, I'll jump in here. There's a difference in that answer. You said there's two answers in the law. Well, it depends on whether you're talking about the U.S. Constitution, and I would argue that the founders who drafted the U.S. Constitution might have been the single wisest public servants in the history of humankind. And then we got the Ohio Constitution. Not as good. Under the U.S. Constitution, direct taxes, which the U.S. Supreme Court has held to generally include direct taxes on property, which most scholars believe include wealth taxes, property taxes, personal and real property taxes. Those are unconstitutional unless apportioned by population, which essentially makes them unconstitutional. Short version of the story. So on the federal Constitution, property taxes can't be done. That's why you're not paying a property tax bill to Uncle Sam. If you are, you're making a mistake. The Ohio Constitution has no such prohibition. And so unfortunately, our government is taking full advantage of the fact that there is not a constitutional prohibition on property taxes, ... yet. That's why we're circulating this petition and signing in the hundreds of thousands across Ohio, because once this petition is on the ballot and once a majority of Ohioans vote for it in 2026, guess what? Just like the U.S. Constitution, the Ohio Constitution will prohibit property taxes once and for all. No more tax on unrealized gains, no more wealth tax in Ohio. Done.
I'll take a shot at lawyers. Sorry, John. Frequently have been frustrated. I always make the joke that you ask 5 lawyers in a room a legal question, you're going to get 7 opinions, and that's certainly how it is. To your question about this, right in the Ohio Constitution, it says the General Assembly shall make such provisions by taxation as it relates to school funding. And obviously, 200 years ago or 100 years ago, the only reasonable level of taxation for state government, other than the federal government at the time liked to tax whiskey, was property tax. It was the only stable in an agrarian society of farmers. It was really the only stable means by which our forefathers knew to fund the basics of that one-room schoolhouse, the basics of the townships, and the maintaining of the roads. The difference is, over time, of course, government has expanded and exploded and created all kinds of new levels of taxation and new levels of government. And to John's point, what this calls into question, really, when it comes to taxes in schools, is we should be removing school funding from property taxes. I've been making this argument with our legislative leaders for a couple of years now, is that the burden on local property owners to fund a state function, to John's point, because it is a state function, it's in our Constitution. You talk about the constitutionality of public funding in schools, our Constitution literally calls it out and says the state shall do this. And that was because our early founders of Ohio believed in public education and were so committed to it, they wrote it into the Constitution. Now the problem is, it's now on the backs of every local property owner by such a large degree. When the reality is that the state of Ohio should be looking to reform government, schools, consolidate it, reduce those costs, and remove that from your property tax bill. To John's point, if the legislature were to seriously tackle the school funding formula, that you would all in this room immediately get a 65 to 70% property tax cut. If I cut your property taxes by 65%, how many are still here in this room? You'd probably be, how many of you here are really angry about your local fire department levy? No. What are you frustrated with? Your school levy, right? You see, to Leonard's point, the poor product. You see the struggle of students and the bad scores that keep getting worse over time. And you realize that you're not getting the value, okay? So that's really what this comes down to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, the problem that I have, though, is that the legislators, they take an oath. Support and defend the Ohio Constitution. Article 1. They are to defend life, liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and seeking and obtaining happiness and safety for their citizens. I contend that they're not following their oath on protecting property.
All right, may God bless you guys. Obviously passionate, and it's a very selfless endeavor. I appreciate that. I wanted to ask you guys, what is the economic impact on a positive level of giving Ohio back $20 billion a year? Because I know my wife, she's going to come up with some home improvement projects, and every time that money changes hands, that 7% of sales tax goes back to the general fund. And so again, if I hire a contractor, they're gonna hire more people. Their 7% goes to them, and then when they buy materials for that, that's 7% again. What kind of cycle does that add up to with an economic stimulus?
I'm so glad you asked that question, Stu, because we've only been talking about the cost of cutting property taxes, the challenge of replacing the revenue and making government do more with less. And there are few greater challenges than forcing government to do its goddamn job. But we haven't said enough about the huge infusion of capital this would mean for the Ohio economy. I mean, a classic multiplier effect. you'd have to assume that that $20 billion would circle through the Ohio economy at least 5 times. 5 times $20 billion times 7%. I mean, that's $7 billion more in sales taxes, rough math. That's not even counting the, additional, 4 or 5% in income tax that would be collected between the state and the localities. And then you're looking at the investment in the local economy, the jobs created, and the long-term impact. And if we actually reverse the trend of people leaving Ohio, instead having businesses and new families and new residents coming to Ohio, the odds are better than not. And we've seen this in history happen time and time again. The odds are better than not. You cut property taxes by $20 billion. The state of Ohio probably has more than $20 billion in taxes at the local and state level coming back because of that infusion of economic development. I mean, this state is on life support, folks. We are losing people. If we were a patient, we'd be dying. We're a 90-year-old patient with a bad heart and cancer, barely breathing on the respirator. And the solution is, well, let's give them asthma too. Let's up the taxes more. Ohio cannot afford another dime in tax. But this is a great state. We've been blessed with incredible natural resources. We've got Lake Erie to the north. We've got the best farmland in the world. We've got good people, good workers, great universities, huge manufacturing companies. The one thing we don't have is a government that will get out of our way and let us do the job. So, Stu, you are 100% right. I think that we would more than pay for itself. And you know what? Only a cowardly liberal would say, I don't want to see what happens by cutting taxes.
I could add to that. It will level the playing field between small and medium businesses to large corporations. Because if you look at what we're doing in terms of economic development with large corporations, we're already giving them property tax abatements to move here. Intel's getting it. Large hospitals are getting it. They're not paying property taxes for 40, 50 years because they decided to come to Ohio. So we're leveling the playing field and making it say, okay, there are no property taxes for anybody. We're saying that everyone's going to compete at the same level, and we're not picking winners and losers. So we're absolutely doing better for small and medium businesses to actually compete with the large corporations. We all have been seeing this whole debacle with Netflix buying Warner Brothers, creating a monopoly in terms of entertainment. States are creating monopolies in terms of giving them all these benefits that small and medium corporations who have already been here in the state of Ohio, nothing. They've been giving them everything, all the large corporations everything, and the small and medium businesses absolutely nothing. Has anyone who runs a business in the room ever received anything in terms of special privileges from the state? Anybody? No, because they don't care. Because they want to give it to large corporations because, I don't know, it funds their campaign? Maybe. Look at First Energy. Their CEO's in jail for doing that. I'm just saying, we are creating a level playing field by doing this.
I got a question real quick and then I'll hand it to you. But a real fast answer from anybody. The Home Builders Association, are they for abolishing property taxes? Not at all.
We've had.
Yeah, I did meet with a couple of builders in Lake County, and they would not support it because they are enamored by their TIFs. And they want the TIFs being taxpayer financing. That's where the property taxes are used. They get a bond to pay for the improvements of the development, and that bond is repaid by the property taxes by the people. So we have not experienced any developers that are really behind. No one has signed the petition.
Yeah, a lot of that is controlled by the unions too, my friends. So these folks they're not speaking free willy. Let's put it that way. I'm a former construction worker for 38 years. I currently ran for school board a couple of years ago, and I was interested in finding out what I'm going to be dealing with. And I started talking to a few teachers, and the next thing I know, my phone's ringing, and there's 5 other schools calling me. No names. I don't want to know the name of the school. I just want to know what you're dealing with. And what we found out was these kids at the 8th grade level, they're not qualified to move to the 9th grade level, but the grading system is based on merit. It's no longer A's and B's anymore. So I asked the teachers, well, what do you do? How do you get Johnny up there so he's ready to go come graduation time, 9th grade? Our hands are tied. We can't do anything about it. The state grades us on all passing. There's no failures anymore. So now they're all graduating in the same situation. So then I get 2 calls from the community colleges that are saying, Jeff, we're dealing with the same thing. And here's my point. I've mentored kids from Polaris and Medina Career Center, trade schools. They're getting ready to go. I get 10 minutes to talk to them in August. And these kids are full of everything. But the problem is they can't do basic math. I said, you got to be able to do an 8x10 room and know how many sticks you're going to need and 10% plus 10%. They can't figure that out. A baker, the dusty teacher at Tri-C West, a baker, what are they doing? Or a nurse, can't figure out percentages. And they're basically taking 1 step forward and 2 back. So the school systems are looking with 5-star grades. All these kids are moving forward, but it's not what you see behind the curtain, my friends.
Have you seen what Mississippi did? Mississippi was trailing the country in reading and arithmetic and all those standards. And they went the opposite way. They put in place very strict and stringent guidelines in terms of people, the students, the kids passing. If you don't pass, you don't get to go to the next grade. If you aren't proficient. So what they did was they held back kids. And what it did was it forced them to be taught. It forced the schools to have to hold them back. It got their parents engaged because now suddenly the parents had to care. They didn't just want to schlep it off on the poor teachers. It was now a true partnership. And guess what's happened in the first few years of doing this? Their scores are going way up. They've leapfrogged like 10 places in ranking on reading and arithmetic and those basics on young students because they said no more just pushing you forward to get you out of the system. You have to be able to do these things. And because they did that, which is, let's be honest, that's the old-fashioned way of doing it. Until you know it, you don't get to move on. And they did that, and now they're seeing great results from it. And that's the kind of reform that needs to happen in Ohio.
Absolutely. Okay. We got 2 more questions tonight, and then we have to kick everybody out, I guess, because and that's appropriate for Thirsty Cowboy. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to thank you all for tonight. I'm encouraged by a lot of things that we're hearing, but I want to make a statement that, and I think most of us here are awake to this, but we're at war. We are absolutely at war. Everything that's happening, the taxes, transgender, abortion, everything is for reduced population. That is to force us to be slaves, to be dependent upon our government. So we have to wake up on all these issues. We have to be like a dog on a bone. We cannot sit back. And I have a question. Maybe this is crazy, but maybe we're at the place of crazy. So I want to know, renters can put their rent in escrow. Can taxpayers put their taxes in escrow? Is there some mechanism that would work similar? Because they sure would wake up. Thank you.
There's currently no provision under Ohio law to escrow taxes.
Okay, we got one last question here, and I want to thank everybody for coming out. I really appreciate it. You guys were terrific tonight. Absolutely. I was hoping we'd get a nice crowd tonight, and we got a great crowd tonight. So thank you again. Thank you all. Okay, this will be our final question tonight. I'm putting the pressure on you here.
Well, I just wanted to say, I used to be a school board member. I was a school board president and a school board vice president. What you're saying about our school systems and the waste is just far beyond what anybody could comprehend. We need to bring common sense back to every aspect of our government. And when I say common sense, like for instance, when I was a school board president, I made sure that our kids in one of the poorest school districts in the state of Ohio, Morgan Local, that we taught our kids how to write in cursive, how to read in cursive, how to do that basic thing that set our kids apart from everything else that they were facing. But one thing that you were talking about, the legislators deciding not to talk to you, not to answer your questions. We have to fight because we are in a war. We are in a war. When we have true Christian conservatives that are running for office, we need your support. Just like Stu and I, we are the only Christian conservatives that are running for governor. The only ones. We have to have support. We have to have people that stand up and support and get our word out there and do the things that we need to do. And we have to have all of us encourage people to step out. It doesn't matter if you have political experience per se. It matters if you have common sense and you're led with a heart of the Lord. That's what matters. And we have to do something, and we have to do it now because we are at war, and our children are being groomed every day. They are being groomed. And that's where a lot of our tax dollars go. It's for this whole grooming process of the transgenders, of the making sure that they know all of this woke gay and lesbian jargon. We have to fight, and we have to fight with everything that we have, or we are going to lose our children. And we are going to lose our ability to pass on generational wealth. And when they take that from us, everyone, when they take away our ability to pass on generational wealth, we will continue to be slaves. We will continue to be slaves, and we will never get out of the rat race. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. I got one question. Somebody want to know how many signatures we have, Brian.
When we need 413,488 signatures. Our goal is to collect 620,000. When I get this question, I get it all the time. In fact, I got it down at the winter conference of the county commissioners, and I said, Jerry Serino declared war on we the people, and when you're at war, you never give the enemy any intel. So I am not telling anyone. I am the only one in Lake County and the state of Ohio that knows how many signatures we have, and my lips are sealed.
All righty. Okay. Hey, thanks again, everybody. God bless you all very, very much for coming tonight. We thank you all. Yeah. Have a good night.
We need signatures if anyone has to
You don't know how it's going.